Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Shaken and Disturbed. John Thrasher is waxing on, waxing off right now. I am Daryn Carp here with Magic Hands Thrasher. Magic,
That's
because
Magic
your
is my
cat's name
son.
Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and he doesn't have hands. These are like
He
if
does not
Magic
have
had
hands.
hands, it would
No.
be John Thrasher. Welcome to Shaken and Disturbed, John. It's good to see you. And I just want to apologize for everyone looking at the video and smashing that subscribe button that I'm in New York today. So
Little
I'm
different
holding up this
setup.
mic. Little
Yeah.
different setup. That's all.
I just want to mention you said magic hands, and I was laughing because earlier today I was opening a can of food for Magic, my son, who is a cat,
Obviously.
and I had really like light shorts on, like not really big fabric, if that makes sense. And he loves to like jump up on my leg and just press his paws out and just be excited, like
How
how cats
horrible.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how
I know.
horrible. It
Except
sounds
this time
awful.
with these basically like how do I put it? Like nothing shorts. I mean, they're really like there's nothing to them. His claws went right through and just scratched my leg.
Yeah.
So I'm like opening this can of food and I just scream at the top of my lungs, but he's like being the sweetest little kindest thing in the world, and I was like,
Well,
"You're lucky you look so cute."
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
my brother always says that like just a stern look should do
I
it to
know.
make sure
You
that
would
they know
think.
that they're never,
Yeah.
just give them a stern look and that should do it. Just like be like magic.
I know, it's weird. I've noticed that whenever and we will get to an episode today, you guys, but
We have
um
one.
and we have one, it's coming. I have noticed that when I change my tone of voice, no matter what I'm saying to him, and I was
Oh,
testing
he
this,
responds.
he
Oh,
responds to my tone of voice. So I don't know that he knows or my facial expressions or even what I'm saying, but if I was like orange bananas in a certain tone of voice, orange
he'd be
bananas,
like,
where did that come from?
yeah, I don't know.
He would know
I don't
he
know
would
what's going
know
on in
that
your
it's not a good
fridge.
thing.
Right.
Right?
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
That's maybe he's so magical that he can create orange bananas.
Maybe he's like ChatGPT in a sense. By the way, I want to get to something at the beginning of the show. Darren
Oh
was running a
God.
little bit late this morning or today for this recording, and you made a joke, Darren, about running late to martinis and murder recordings
Every
every
week,
single week.
every week, because I
And
was
I was
coming from
like,
downtown when I did my
that's
people
right.
show. Every week I was late, and I was like, "Aren't you nostalgic for the days where I
And I
pour
remember
sweat running into the
I
office?"
know, and I always felt bad because you would come in, just understandably like kind of not frazzled, but you're just, running up from the street. And I'm like, I was always like, it's fine. Like, we're all just sitting here and you don't have
I
to
know,
be
but I
upset.
can't stand it.
I
It's my
know. And you
own
hate it.
like
Yeah.
mental illness about it. I like, for lack of a better term, that I just like I
Yeah.
hate being late,
No, I
and
do
I even
too.
if
I
there's
get
nothing I
that.
could do to really help it, which today like there truly wasn't anything I could kind of do.
Yeah.
Um, I hate it. I don't like people. I value people's time. I want them to
Of
value
course.
mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously stuff happens, but yeah.
You're generally one of the most on time people I've ever met, though. Like, you're really good at being like organized. But it was just such a funny, like, throwback
It's
thing that
always
I
a
kind
thing.
of
Yeah.
forgot about until you brought it up. But
Well, you
yeah,
didn't
it's
seem
fun.
to have to really reach to the back of that memory bank to get it. You were like, "Yep, I
Oh,
remember that
oh
every
yeah, I
week." And I was
remember.
like, "Oh, oh,
I was like,
okay.
yeah, every week. I
I
remember
thought you'd be like, "What do
sitting
you mean?
there.
You were always on time." And then I was like, "Nope." You were like, "Yep, every week you were late." I was like, "Cool,
Yeah,
cool,
every
cool."
single time. Cool. Anyway,
Should we get
lovely
into
to
this
have
week's
you.
case?
Yes, thank you for being available for this week, and let's get
Ah,
into it.
ah,
So, in July of 1996, 14-year-old Crystal Champagne, that's right, Crystal Champagne,
that's a
lived with
great name.
lived with her parents in Marrero, Louisiana, a town just a short trip across the river from downtown New Orleans. Like many families in the area, Crystal had a fair number of close and distant relatives also residing nearby. On July 19th of that year, 1996, Crystal left home just after 5 p.m. for a quick walk to the grocery store. Now, her parents grew a little worried when she didn't return promptly, and her mother even went out to look for her but had no luck.
Ah,
Around 6:45 that evening, about an hour and 45 minutes later, Crystal's father enlisted help for a more thorough search of the neighborhood and brought along some neighbors, including Crystal's 21-year-old cousin, Damon. Now, the group looked for the young girl all night and into the next day, with everyone growing, of course, increasingly fearful about what would have happened to her. The Champagnes contacted the authorities to aid in the search. Investigators immediately began trying to locate and spark with anyone who saw or spent time with Crystal in the hours before she vanished. By the next day, the afternoon of July 20th, she still wasn't found, and Crystal's parents heard a rumor that a girl who looked like their daughter had been seen near the levee the night before. Now, remember New Orleans, lots of levees down
I,
there.
yeah, I wanted to pause you because for some reason the age 14
Yeah.
just feels like such a tough age with something like this because you're kind of old enough to have some sort of
Oh,
independence. You can certainly walk to school. You're in high school. Like
right.
it's young, but people lose their virginity like at 14. But also for a girl, you're like, that's a child. Like
I
it's
know.
just an interesting thing. And also a few weeks ago I had mentioned this Hulu series with Lily Gladstone and Riley
Oh, yeah.
Keough called Under the Bridge. And it was about sort of these group of teenagers who wanted to be part of like the Crips, and
Mm-hmm.
they beat and killed this 14-year-old girl who was I
Mm,
can't remember if she was Pakistani or Indian, but she was ethnic to say the
yeah.
least, and sort of had made fun of her for it. And it was kind of about solving this mystery. And you're like, they are innocent in terms of they're young, like innocent people doing very not innocent
Right.
things. And so
Right.
there's just
Right.
something about the age 14 that just like sticks in my head for some
Yeah.
reason.
Well, especially after hearing that story, I'm sure it would
Yeah,
for you.
exactly.
Well, authorities went to search the area. However, a few stayed behind to continue conducting interviews. And unfortunately, Crystal's body was indeed found at that levee with a red piece of cord wrapped around her neck. Her
Jeez.
shirt had been pulled up to expose her breasts, and her shorts had been pulled down, indicating to police that she may have also been sexually assaulted. And to your point though about the 14-year-old, like, I have a nephew who just turned 18, and
Right.
he was always, I've mentioned him enough on the show at this point, but I always felt like a father figure to him. I was always like, make sure you don't do this and let's get you this and make sure you're thinking about this. And to think now, and I think there is a generational difference. To think now about a 14-year-old him as a guy is very different, I will say, even but just even being 14 himself and like knowing that he was staying with a friend, and that's the age that their people sleep over, and are they
Yeah.
actually sleeping over, are they sneaking out? That to me as an uncle who didn't live near him at that point was very stressful, so I can only imagine what it was like then. That being said, I do want to mention 1996, we've talked a lot about the generational differences of our cases. Something that happened in the 90s might not kind of apply the same way it does today. But I feel like in the 90s, it was like peak, like go out in the street and have fun with your friends until the lights turn on type of thing,
Or
you
at least
know?
it not peak, but it certainly felt like the last of the
Like the
generations to be able
last.
to
Yes,
kind
that's a
of
good
do
point.
that, like of
Yes.
yeah, like no cell phones. So go out in the street and go play
Right.
yards, go play tag around the neighborhood, but like kind of
Right.
get lost for the afternoon and then come back
And see ya.
and
So
scrape your knee,
so a trip to the grocery store may have not even have been that big of a deal back then. So just something to think about. I just feel like, yeah, like you said, Darren, the 90s kind of felt like the last wave of fun in that way.
I agree with that. It's
Yeah,
I think cell phones have a lot to do with it. But so
I
the
agree.
medical examiner who performed Crystal's autopsy found that she also had sustained blunt force injuries to her right eye, indicating that
Mm,
she had likely been struck by something, maybe a rock or a baseball bat. 14-year-old girl, John.
I
14-year-old
know. I
girl.
keep
Oh,
thinking
14-year-old
14.
boy, but like 14-year-old girl. Like
No, no, of course, 14. Yeah, it's
she
crazy.
also had bruises to her hips and her buttocks, indicating that she may have struggled. They determined she had been dead for about 24 hours before she was found. And the
Mm,
authorities who discovered the body sent word to those who remained behind with the family that just speaking of kind of things that I was talking about, that Barbara Butcher book, What the Dead Knows. She was a
yeah.
medical examiner in New York, and she talks about how they determine how long a body's been
Yep.
deceased for is really interesting to notice blood flow and how it rigor mortis
Oh
and what
yeah.
comes in if it's in the water, how that affects it. It's fascinating to
And I
find
know
a
that
kind of
there
a
are,
rough cause of death, time of death.
sorry to interrupt you there.
No, you're good.
Um yeah, there are some details that we're about to get into, I think, at the end of this episode that will
Yeah.
really appeal to that. So,
Yes. Well, the authorities who discovered the body sent word to those, right, like I said, who remained behind with the family. And it just so happened that when the call came, Crystal's cousin Damon was in the middle of being interviewed, at which point a homicide detective took over questioning him. Damon informed police that he knew nothing about his cousin's whereabouts and even agreed to accompany the authorities to the station to undergo a polygraph test. Now, at this point, Damon had not slept in over 24 hours as he had been up all night searching for his cousin. No one is in their right mind, stressful or not, if you haven't slept for 24 hours.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
Now, once the test was complete, investigators determined that Damon's answers about Crystal's murder showed deception. They continued to
Mm,
hold him at the station, questioning him for over 9 hours without a break to rest or eat. And said he's sleep deprived. Now they're just running over the scenarios in the just over and over and
yeah.
over. Over the course of the interrogation, Damon's story changed completely. First, he told police that he and Crystal had consensual sex. This is his cousin. Next, he admitted to having raped her. That's big. And by the end of the 9 hours, Damon had confessed to Crystal's murder.
Yep, and I'm thinking Brendan Dassey. I'm thinking of a recent episode where we brought up Brendan Dassey as well. So something to think about. So only 54 minutes of the session were actually taped. Oh, what a coincidence. And Damon claims that during the 8 missing hours, the police threatened to put the 21-year-old man to death by lethal injection if he did not confess to the crime. If you're a longtime listener or not even a longtime listener, you can probably guess that these tactics are typical for coerced confessions. We're going to get to more of that, of course, as the show goes on. So, there were some noteworthy errors in Damon's confession, most glaringly, the color of the cord used to strangle Crystal. Damon recalled it as being white or gray stereo wire from his car instead of a red cord.
I
After
also
the
want to stop you
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say that, like, I understand we've talked about this police wanting to get a confession, wanting to solve it, especially with this 14-year-old girl. But under the conditions under which this guy is being interrogated, if he did it,
right,
do it right. So that way, when they go to court,
right.
you don't have to go back and say, like, this was unethical.
Right, of course.
You,
Well,
like, do it correctly.
and this is another thing about the 90s is I don't think that prosecutors and defense lawyers are even really thinking about that because you can get away with it under these conditions. We've seen it plenty of other times too. I think we're more aware of that now in 2024 than ever before, but in 1996, this is probably a tried and true method, sadly. But let's see where this goes exactly. So, after the police took his formal confession, he was given a meal and allowed time to himself. Shortly thereafter, Damon recanted his confession completely, but was ignored. Damon was charged with Crystal's first degree murder and rape. The defense entered a plea of not guilty at arraignment. Trial began on September 29th, 1997, and Damon's defense team had a solid case to present to the jury. The defense called an entomology professional to provide testimony testimony about the insects found.
Testimony, the San Francisco
Just
tree.
treat. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a weird way to say that. But yes, the defense called an entomologist, I should say,
Yes.
to provide testimony about the insects that were found on Crystal's body at the time that she was found. Now, this is where it's going to get kind of disturbing and it involves insects on a dead body. So just be aware of that. You've
Which,
been warned.
trust me, we all know my arachnophobia here. Like, I
Yeah, right.
can't handle it. So if
Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna bear through it, you can handle it.
yes,
But
exactly.
it's a lot.
So this expert informed the jury that fly larva was found on her body. And while flies will happily, lay eggs on a deceased person only a few hours after their death, it is noted that they will not lay eggs after dark, which I think is a really
Interesting.
important detail here. So, based on the age of the larva, Crystal had been dead for somewhere between 24 to 28 hours when she was found. I think this is according to that entomologist, which doesn't, this timeline was consistent with the medical examiner's prior findings. So it's an interesting detail. We know the details about, how long it took for something like this to happen based on the condition of her body and what was
And
found.
given that larvae don't do anything at night, so that would
There you go.
Jesus, they waste no time though. They're ready to just fucking lay eggs. Like,
Right?
my
Like, what the
God.
fuck?
Now, although she was found undressed, which John had mentioned at the top of the episode, there was zero evidence whatsoever that Crystal had been raped before her death, which does seem odd because her clothes are sort of in a, you know, in a
In a
way that would
condition that
suggest that
seem, yeah.
There was
Yeah.
no evidence of sexual trauma present, nor was there any semen or other physical DNA left behind by an attacker. Okay. So while on the stand, a police officer suggested that perhaps the fly larva had eaten the non existent semen that may have proven a sexual assault. Can
Okay.
can
What
can
does
they can
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 a
they do
police
that?
officer do that? I was
Uh,
just thinking the same thing. What do you
The
know,
defense
Mr. Police
this is like
Officer?
some Twitter thread that's just like, "Oh, but, if the earth is flat, then people fall off of it." The
Right,
defense
right,
attorneys also informed the jury that police had coerced and threatened Damon to secure his confession, which does seem truthful. They
right.
also told the jury that during their questioning of Damon, police had suggested facts about the murder, which Damon later then parroted back as part of his confession, which we all know when they're saying facts about a murder, like, that's
Right.
that's how they're trying to coerce someone to say it back to them. It's just crazy. Now, the prosecution's case was primarily focused on Damon's confession given after the arduous interrogation. They also called two eyewitnesses to the stand to give testimony. Each stated that they had seen a man nervously pacing near the levee on the night of Crystal's murder. Okay,
Hmm.
people nervously pace, but this is a
Sure.
little odd. It's by a levee. The witnesses were shown a photo array containing Damon's picture and asked if the person they saw at the levee was present in the array. Both witnesses selected Damon's photo.
Hmm.
Hmm. Both witnesses were asked again to identify the man they saw in court, and both pointed to Damon again, the defendant.
Yeah, I mean, that's not looking good. I've never been one that really
But
thinks that
eyewitness testimony, John, is
no.
flawed. I
No,
mean,
that's what I was just gonna say. It's like,
yeah,
I don't, I think about this a lot. I'm sure because of the industry in which we're in, but like, you hear about people that can't even tell you what they ate for breakfast that morning, but you're asking them, and I'm not saying that's exactly what's happened here, but let's say hypothetically, but then you're asking them to remember the exact person that they saw in the evening by a levee who you weren't really meant to remember to begin with. It's all just very sus to me, sussy radish type stuff,
I
but
agree. It's
yeah,
just not to me, that's not definitive. To me,
definitely not.
that might show something, but it doesn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt to me. Unless it's like
No, I
5,000
agree.
people are seeing the same thing. Two people dark at night by a levee.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
With no cameras, which is another
right.
indication, we're in the late 90s. It's not really like digital cameras were in everyone's pocket or on every street corner. So I don't know. For me, that's cameras are one thing. I think if you have camera evidence and it's very clear, you can't really escape that. But yeah, memory late at night, I don't know if
Just
really
doesn't seem right.
works.
Yeah.
No. Well, on October 3rd, 1997, the jury convicted Damon of rape and first degree murder. The court chose to
Mm,
sentence him to death.
damn.
The defense team immediately entered motions for a post verdict judgment of acquittal and a new trial, citing a number of errors that occurred during the investigation and the trial. The most egregious error cited was, of course, this coerced confession. The defense argued that given the numerous circumstances at play, Damon was in an extremely mentally fragile state, and his confession was highly unreliable.
Right.
I think all of us listening would agree with that.
Right.
By the way, the circumstances being, of course, a 9-hour interrogation that was preceded by 24 hours of searching for his cousin, whose death he had just been informed of, 36 hours of no sleep, plus the factual errors in the confession itself, the
I mean,
cord color being
the
one
cord
thing.
color is big
Yeah.
to me because it's not like people have cords lying around. It's not like I strangled them with my fists and maybe I got the
Yeah.
direction wrong. I mean, this is you had to grab something or prepare something. So you would have known the color of the cord.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking more about his car too. Like, can we go look at the car to see if he
Right.
pulled something out of his car the way he said
Right.
it did? I mean, and what is his alibi? I mean, there must be so many more details, and we're about to get to them. But, for me, it seems like this is kind of an obvious play here. Well, the court denied both motions, and Damon remained in a maximum security prison where he was put in solitary confinement
Damn.
for 23 hours every single day. Which, by the way, I feel like has been I don't know the exact details, but I think that's been ruled, like, extremely cruel and unusual or
Inhumane.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know
Again,
that
I'm
that
not sure that's
happens.
rehabilitating people. I don't
Right,
know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, in 2007, the Innocence Project took the case, and the DA agreed to work with them on a reinvestigation. Now, Darren, as you know, we've talked a lot about the Innocence Project on the show.
Yep.
We've said over and over again, unless there's pretty much no shot that it could go wrong, they take on cases that they think, are going to be
To
slam
have are
dunks. Yeah,
viable. Yeah, right.
exactly. I kind of said that weird, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, the physical evidence taken from the
Check out our
crime.
NMR to listen to John not say anything properly and not be able to tell a
Oh,
story
it's a
without.
mess. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a mess. He's a mess. Okay. Anyway, continue.
available now on the feed. But the physical evidence taken from the crime scene, such as clothing removed from Crystal's body, was re examined and modern DNA testing was performed. This is another thing about the 90s. DNA was certainly a thing, but definitely not where it is in 2007 and beyond. So, more details can be discovered, you can say, from DNA in 2007 versus 1997. So this testing revealed no evidence whatsoever that Damon was present at the crime scene. Furthermore, no evidence was present that Crystal had even been sexually assaulted. This was the crux of the case in a sense.
Right, exactly.
However, new DNA was discovered on the cord and it belonged to an unidentified male that was not Damon. Additionally, investigators re interviewed a number of witnesses, including the two who had testified at the original trial back in 1997. This time, the witnesses in the investigation admitted that prior to being shown the photo lineup, they had seen Damon's picture in the news.
I mean, this
Yeah,
is
I was
like
going to say,
telling
what's your
facts of the case
reaction?
to the person. Like, where did you put the
Yeah,
red cord? And it's like, why would you tell the person that it's a red cord? Like,
right.
what are you doing? Now, seeing someone being exposed to something is going to make them so much more likely. In fact, even on
Sure.
NMR, how
Yeah.
I have how just basically entitled people just seem to live around me and I find annoyances. I was
Yeah.
talking about how you see your lucky number in the wild more than you see any
Yeah,
other number,
exactly.
but you're just paying attention to it more. You're predisposed to knowing who
That's how
that person
brains work.
is.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Even now I'll be like, how do I know that person? That person seems so familiar. On
Yeah,
TV show, my high school, I worked with this person. Like this
totally.
is common sense.
Yeah, I know, it's true. Well, nevertheless, they reshared their story of seeing the suspicious looking man pacing near the levee, and it turned out that they saw him the day after Crystal's body was found. So none of
Interesting.
the witness testimony seems to really add up to anything whatsoever pointing to Damon being connected.
Well, by that time, Damon was already in police custody. The person they saw could not have been him. When this new evidence was presented to the DA's office, the prosecutors reached out to an expert in false confessions,
There you go.
asking their professional opinion on the case.
And by
The
the way,
expert reached,
did those
yeah,
people exist in 1997? Experts in false confessions? We'd
right,
have to look into that.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think it just gets better with technology every single
Of
time. The
course. Yeah.
expert reached the same conclusion as the defense team. Damon had confessed due to his grief, exhaustion, and fear, as well as an immense pressure exerted by police. I mean, if a guy's going to spend 24 hours, now granted, this could be a ruse, 24 hours of no sleep looking for his cousin just to eventually admit he killed her
Right.
seems an awful waste of time. On
Right.
September 29th, 2012, the DA's office vacated Damon's conviction and freed him from death row. And now, at
Wow.
the time of his release, Damon had spent 15 years on death row and a
Yeah.
total of 16 years behind bars, plus all the solitary confinement of 23 hours a
Right.
day. Damon filed a federal civil rights lawsuit for his wrongful conviction. However, his suit was put on hold until 2017. After his release, Damon worked really hard to create some semblance of a normal life. He earned his high school diploma, began working at a law firm that helped exonerate him, which was just talk about giving back. He later became a public speaker and advocate for prison and wrongful conviction reform, traveling the country to
Wow.
share a story. That's essentially what the Innocence Project does. In
Yeah.
August of 2021, just 3 years ago, 47-year-old Damon passed away from COVID. He'd been
Mm.
released from prison for less than 10 years. And Damon's lawsuit was never settled, and he received no financial restitution for the time he spent in prison, which just goes to show that people with good intentions, the road is paved to hell with good
Yeah.
intentions, because these people who think that they're helping out with a case with eyewitnesses don't realize that one small detail, seeing them 12 minutes before something happened or the day after, matters in ruining another person's life.
Yeah. And I think it's good to mention as well, this isn't necessarily on the eyewitnesses, like these are people who
No,
think
it's
they're
on the police to get.
helping. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But it's a combination of things slipping through the cracks.
For sure, 100%. And it's like, these poor eyewitnesses who probably, I would imagine, feel some amount of guilt if they knew how everything played out because
I
maybe not
certainly
all
would.
these. Yeah, but it's true. It's the police department. It's it's this thing that we've talked about so many times on the show about why do police departments just want the confession and want to put something behind them like that so quickly? Like what I
Quotas,
still
man.
I still don't get the motivation behind this aside from yeah, you're the quota of making sure you have a certain percentage of
We
things
have a
convicted.
100%
Yeah,
completion rate,
exactly.
right? But is it accurate?
No,
I finished the
exactly.
test, but am I going to get
And
an A? Like,
and
that's the point.
people's lives are destroyed as a result of it. It's just tragic. But anyway,
Yeah.
let us know what you guys think about this week's episode. Hit us up at J Thrasher and Carpe Daryn. Hit us up on our Facebook group, and of course, if you're a patron, comment on our Patreon post,
Yeah, I know.
and
That's always
maybe
hard for me to say too.
I know maybe we'll read your thoughts and comments on a future episode. Daryn, let's get into listener shoutouts. This is a little bit of a quick episode this week, but not all of them can be an hour and 45 minutes long.
Yes, I mean, listen, we give it to you in snackable bites, but let me
There you
take this
go.
first listener shout out. Our longtime fan, Mitz, we love Mitz, said,
Love
Daryn, I'm
Mitts.
totally with you on everything. Thank you, Mitz. People playing music loud as fuck in public or having their speaker on while having a full blown conversation, too. What the fuck? Why are there so many rude people now? I feel like after COVID, it got worse. I agree with you, but I also don't know if it's like COVID forced us to just like be so in like by ourselves that now like our
Yeah.
tolerance for annoyance has lowered because everything's fucking annoying now, like dealing with people. So I don't know what came first, chicken or the
Oh,
egg, but I agree with you. Like, I don't know what people are thinking. They're so entitled and
yeah.
they aren't thinking about other people. It's just absolutely absurd.
Well, not only that, but you have been in scenarios where this just ironically has happened to you so
Just,
much.
it
Guys,
truly
listen
just
to our
happens to
NMR
me.
episodes. Darren's situations have been comical and clown like, to say the
Yeah.
least. Wendy, and thank you for that, Mitz. Wendy in our Facebook group says, quote, I started with Shaken and Disturbed, but now I need to catch back up. Y'all are amazing. Love the way you vibe together. Keep up the good
Ooh.
work. Thank
Oh,
you, Wendy. You guys need to start complimenting us more. I think a lot of you children out there are just
you're
getting too
slacking.
comfortable. Yeah,
Right.
you just come to expect this great chemistry and great vibe. So Wendy, you're our number one radish for this week. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we love you
Um,
guys. Thank you. We do vibe, John,
we
after
do. We do.
basically 10 years together.
My God, can you
We're
believe
vibing.
that? Yeah.
And guys, if you want to see us vibe even more, please subscribe to Patreon where we have all kind of fun content and early access. We really love making content for you guys. So if you can chip in to help show it,
Sure.
that really goes a long way and we'll vibe more. John and I are basically going to have sex right after we end this recording, right, John?
Well, listen, Pride
Okay.
is
It's an
happening, but
enthusiastic yes, people. Don't take his
yeah.
hesitation for anything other than an enthusiastic yes. Right,
Yeah,
John?
yeah, something like that. By the way,
Cool.
before we sign off, I just want to say in this week's NMR, which you can listen to right now, I do need the listeners to come help me. I want to be friends with my barber, and I need your
Yes.
advice. Darren gave great advice. I don't want you to downplay your advice, Darren, but I would love to hear what the listeners think as well.
Yeah, or like if you are not gay and if a gay person said that to you, would you
Yeah,
think, is this person hitting
exactly.
on me? That would
Yeah,
be
we need to
helpful.
know. We need to
We
know.
want
And
your
speak
honesty.
exactly. And speaking of advice, Darren, of course, this is for everyone out there. Please take your vitamins or your vitamins, as like to call them.
Even more importantly, you must check your pits,
Mm,
especially if you have a penis. Just
okay.
FYI, John, in
There
case
you
you didn't
go.
know.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great 4th of July if you're in America and
Happy Independence
celebrating.
Day.
And
Yes.
be very safe. There's a lot of accidents that happen on 4th of July. We do not want to hear about this and then end up being an episode on our
And
show.
being a
Okay?
case. Absolutely.
Exactly. Love you
We
guys.
love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.